you know, we still need the stories, whether we read modern novels or not. It's like, you know, we need that connection, whether it's with our elders or with our kids. You know, we pass these stories on as something precious. For me personally, it's probably just the unknown, you know. I've always been drawn more to the unknown and whatever the beyond of normal life. So I would actually go out and look for these. You know, we would go to haunted houses. We would go to haunted areas of the cities. See what was going on, you know? Yeah, now, whatever that comes from, I don't know. But it kept life interesting.
It was almost like an escape.
Definitely an escape. Family life was not a happy life. So that was an escape, definitely.
Hey, welcome to the Floaties for Krakens podcast. I am your host, Camille Maria Costa, and it is a brilliant day to be monstrous. Hi, Cuttlefish. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 7 of the Floaties for Krakens podcast. Hi. As you can tell, I'm not in my normal Floaties for Krakens spot today. I'm actually at the Kentucky Folklife program headquarters, which is a place near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. But the reason that I'm recording this introduction today from the KFP is because I'd like to recognize a really amazing, important thing that's happening on Halloween Day, Thursday, October 31st. The Kentucky Folklife program is partnering with some amazing activists, artists, spooky people from across the nation to highlight and celebrate Dia de los Muertos. And we're doing an amazing live stream with the Kentucky Folklife program. And so I wanted to highlight that because it's in person, of course, but there's also a hybrid option. So there will be some zooming in. And I think, you know, I'm sure you're all so busy on Halloween Day, but I thought it would be wonderful to promote it in case you're not doing anything, which is rare. And, you know, I'm sure you all are so popular and so busy. But if you're interested, I will drop that Zoom link down below. It'll be Thursday, October 31st, 2024 from 2:30 p.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. CST. Now, if you're in Bowling Green, Kentucky at that time, you're more than welcome to come to the in-person events before and after as well. There's going to be an amazing Dia de los Muertos ofrenda viewing, as well as an incredible folclórico dance group, Raíces de mi Tierra from Nashville. So yeah, if you want to do some spooky stuff, please come down. Here's the information. This is a little flyer that has all the cool stuff and things of that nature. But yeah, hop into the live stream if you'd like to learn about Dia de los Muertos, because it's a beautiful holiday, an amazing Mexican tradition. So yeah, this is a beautiful quilt highlighting the KFP. So anyway, yeah, so come join the KFP on Halloween. But that being said, we have an amazing episode today. I'm so happy, and I was just so floored by the wealth of knowledge of this individual and how much I learned. And just, it was such a breeze speaking with her, and she's doing incredible work. I'd love to introduce you to the amazing Elle Marie Wood, an incredible author, poet, screenplay writer, screenwriter, short story novelist, like just a novella novel, right? Like she is just star-studded and amazing, and just has won many awards, has been a finalist for many awards. She's really pushing the boundaries on what psychological horror is and what it could be. And she's brilliant. She's doing some amazing work and has created 1,000,001 works that I will link, you know, down in the description box below. She's incredible. And I'm so happy that this is the monster that she chose. And it was such a joy to be I don't know, it felt like kids talking about our best friend. And I thought that was really beautiful. And I just love how monsters can connect us, even amidst the darkest times and dealing with the darkest subjects. So, yeah, I'm so excited for you to watch this episode. I think you'll really, really love it. And Elle Marie, just thank you for everything that you do in the horror world, and specifically promoting monsters in the way that you do. And having that empathy and self exploration, I think, is so beautiful. So, thank you so much for all that you do. Anyway, without further ado, ladies and cuttlefish, let me introduce to you Best Friendship for Godzillas. Well, hello, Elle Marie, again.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm better now that I get to talk to you today. I'm very thrilled, so
Oh,
excited.
cool. So am I. I'm excited.
And thank you so much for doing this. I think it's going to be a wonderful conversation. Such a
Thanks.
great conversation. Well, for individuals that may not know, please, Elle Marie, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and all those wonderful things.
Okay. I'm a psychological horror author. I have 14 books out now, a couple more coming this year.
Woo.
Uh, and I write novels, short stories, screenplays, poetry now, which is interesting. That's kind of new. Essays,
Yes.
novellas. I think I've done everything except maybe graphic novels, which is interesting. So maybe I should look into that.
Ooh, I love
Um,
it.
yeah, I just like to write anything and talk about writing stuff. So
Incredible. That's amazing. I'm so curious because we are definitely going to get into the breadth of your work because you have written so many amazing things and, as you mentioned, so many genres. But I'm really curious, what brought you to the world of the spooky?
I don't know. I've been writing since I was 5. I really don't know what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm okay with it. I think I'm fine with that. I don't know. I think I've always liked a story that didn't, because it's psychological horror. So that's one of the subgenres of horror. So it's
Yeah.
not. I know that a lot of times when people listen or watch or read horror, they immediately think slasher, gory, something like that. And
Sure.
psychological is quiet and lots of stuff going on in your head as opposed to happening out in front, more related to gothic. I mean, we all get our roots in gothic fiction, but psychological horror is really, really like still there.
Right.
Psychological and quiet both are really still very rooted there. And I don't know. I've just always been interested in that. So even at 5 years old, I wrote a story, and my mom thinks it's funny. I had to figure out a way to do it again, but she reminds me every now and then that the last line of that very first story that I wrote was, "And then she woke up." And I still want to make that happen somehow. I got to figure out how to do that. But I mean, the whole story was like a dream, and I know that seems, now that that was a 5-year-old's mind putting that together, but I would need to be a little craftier now, I think. But the whole idea that something that you think is reality is not, is truly psychological in nature and quite frightening. So I have always been there.
That is what a line to write at such a little age, right? With such a
Right?
little body, a little brain, right? Like that is so brilliant to comprehend that concept of flipping it on its head, right?
Yeah.
I love that. That is so cool. And psychological horror, I mean, it is, as you mentioned, what is crazy is I feel like us as human beings, like as audience members, whether we're reading something or watching something, in a strange way, we have more of a connection to the world of psychological horror because we can all kind of relate to these feelings, right? Of
Right.
whether it's like mental health disparities or battling with the brain or figuring out perception of
Right.
reality. And that's what, makes it more haunting. I, I would
Right.
say.
For me, it's always been that I prefer not to know the ending from the beginning of the story. I prefer I could end the story or a movie and not know what happened 100%. This is my favorite movie. I'll watch it for once a year, and but I mean for 20 years now. I mean, it's an old movie. I
Right.
don't want to call it old. It's not that old, but Angel Heart. It was like 1986 or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
And I can watch that movie and still see something different every single time. And I've read the book, and I'm still finding new things out of it. And I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's for me, that's the draw, because I want to be mentally stimulated. I don't want to have you give me all of the pieces. Like
Right.
when you read a mystery or a thriller, don't tell me everything. Let something sit out there that I have no idea and I never get it. Like I never
Yeah, yes. It's like
Yeah.
a puzzle.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's not to say there's anything wrong with tying everything up. There's not. I mean, a lot of people really enjoy that and are quite frustrated by what I'm talking about enjoying. But from my perspective, I've always been the person who's like thrilled to find something new, and then I can draw all these new connections and try to see if it makes any more sense. Oh gosh, I love that. I love that. So if you can do that in writing, because as a person who does it now, like writes that way, I can tell you it's very difficult. You have to like mystery, suspense, thriller
Right.
to be able to weave that into anything. It doesn't matter if it's horror, it doesn't matter if it's romance, whatever. To weave those elements in, it's just so incredibly difficult, because you don't want to give away too much, because then the story's it's transparent, or you don't want to keep it so wrapped tight that people just feel like they'll never get it, like an escape room. Now I'm telling the truth of me now, right? I can't get out of an escape room to save my life. It's ridiculous. And but what ends up happening is I get bogged down in the details, and I'm just like in this, and if you're really good, which most people apparently seem to be like far high, you can dive into those details and feel like you're doing this partnership thing
Mm.
with the creator of the escape room and that room, or in writing, the author and the reader. There's got to be a partnership. If we're not going down the journey together,
Mm.
then one of us is leaving the other behind, and I don't my goal is to try and make sure that we're right near each other all the way.
Oh, that's incredible. That's amazing. I feel like that's a giant mark of a brilliant writer, right? Because I don't know, I think it's so wonderful and so giving for you to think about us like in that way. Like, no, 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 like let them have their fun, right? And explore and push the limits of the brain, but we're there. We're going to guide you and help you along the way.
Mhm.
And that's just so much fun. I'm just like you. I love going back to, your favorite films or your favorite books, reading them over and over again and just being like, oh my gosh, this is completely different. And whether, that's just the way you're viewing it that day, something you've been through within the past year that just kind of changes your perspective on certain stuff. Like that's what makes writing so exciting and so incredible, right? Is you can read the same story with different lenses every single time.
That's right.
So fun, so cool. Okay, so how did you explore the world of both horror, psychological horror, and creating this partnership in the work that you do? Please tell us a little bit about your writing works, your novels, your screenplays, everything.
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, we're going to be here for 3 hours.
It's fair. Nope, that's fair.
No, I will say this. I have always, since I've been writing for so long,
Yeah.
and once I realized that this could actually be a career, which was also quite early, I have always tested myself or pushed my limits and tried to stretch my legs, is how I usually phrase it. Because, you can write the same thing, and if you feel pretty good at it, you can keep doing the same thing over and over and over. You're churning out the same type of story, not maybe the same, same, I don't want to say the same character, but you can
Yeah.
you'll become formulaic, and that's not what you want, right?
Mhm.
So I've always tried to sort of test boundaries and dip a toe somewhere that maybe I hadn't done before. So I have like a vampire psychological horror, and it's a vampire tale. I love vampires, but it's from a psychological horror perspective. So I put this poor vampire through some serious paces. It's amazing. I have a ghost story, which is more like a contemporary gothic, but it's psychological horror.
Right.
You know, the short stories, I counted them just the other day. I don't even know why was I doing that. I don't know what I was doing. Something, and I ended up having to count, how many short stories, and I'm
Right.
at 221, which is like what? I can't even believe I didn't realize it was that many. But still, I was counting them, and I'm thinking, oh, because for me, a short story becomes, because I really love the flash fiction space. Um,
Mm.
and so that, for people who aren't, because I didn't know any of these things before I studied this stuff, but
Yeah.
flash is like, what do you think, 500 to 1250 in terms of words.
Right. Right.
That's my space. I really like to sit there And because that allows you to, I start the story in the middle, like really just right. We hit the ground running, so you don't
Yeah.
have a backstory. You just know you better start running and catch up to me because I'm down the street. Hurry up, let's go. Something's chasing. And so we'll do that. And so I'm looking at the different ways that I've expressed that feeling of dread and action and all that. And so I've done that with a werewolf. I did that only once though. I've only done one werewolf, I must say. There are a
That's
couple other,
okay.
I like ghosts, obviously. um
Same.
Zombies a couple times as well. So I like to play with the antagonists
Hmm.
and see what I can make them do in my world, though, in a psychological horror space. So I take a traditional bad guy and
Yeah.
put him in my space, because in my space, I'm wondering if there's something in the shadow as opposed to there
Mhm.
really being something in the shadow. So I have to, it takes a little bit of manipulation when you think about,
Yeah.
trying to fit a traditional antagonist in there. I mean, you imagine putting, the wolf man in the shadow, well, you can hear it. So it's just too obvious, that,
Yeah.
so I have to figure
Yeah.
out how to make it be, what I want it to be. And then when you do that, you're stretching your ability to write. You're stretching your ability to craft a story. You've got to go a little more cosmic in terms of the fear of the unknown when you're having an antagonist that's so clearly obvious. A zombie is not going to be quiet in the shadows.
Yeah.
You can hear that, you know.
Oh, miles away.
So there's no guessing, is there a zombie in the shadows? So you have to be a little more cosmic about how you present the antagonist. So I've done that a couple times. I like to play,
Yeah.
and then of course I like to do a straight on traditional psychological horror, which
Sure.
telecommuting is probably my most recent and purest of
Yes.
psychological horror tales. Though
Yes.
12 hours is pretty good like that as well. It's very, but stream of consciousness. I tried that. I remember reading oh my god, the author's escape me. This is when you realize who I'm talking about, we're both gonna like, gosh, who am I? Oh,
It's
come on.
okay.
As I lay dying. Come on.
Oh, oh,
Oh, come on. How could we not see? Now I have to
oh. Yeah, yeah, go ahead because it's gonna bother us and we're all gonna be like, oh.
Oh, of
Ugh.
course I come from a rock band. Wait a minute. I didn't know there was a band called, okay, yeah, you want to guess real quick? Just
I
any guess.
it's not even forming in my mind.
Faulkner. Don't you feel like a fool? I feel like, oh my god. How
Of
could I
course
have
it is. Of course
no.
it is.
I
No.
said something interesting. This is what I said, right? So there you go. But no, I mean, I read that years ago and I was like, oh, this stream of consciousness is so cool.
Right.
Let's see what that's like. I'd love to try it. And it took me a long time to decide to come back around and do it. I just did it with my novella, 12 Hours. It
Yes.
is like not easy. You think it, because when your head, you're sort of all over the place. We don't think in full sentences. We don't think in full, our thoughts get interrupted by everything every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And to actually write that and have it come out as a story is not the easiest. But I was like, look, I want to try. So
Yeah.
and so that's really, I mean, I think long and short, that is the that's what I do with my writing, my screenplays. I mean, you could call them things experimental, but there's a connotation to experimental that really shouldn't belong,
Yeah.
not just in writing, in music, in art.
Yeah.
And it almost comes across like unformed and unsure and just sort of haphazard. And that's
Right.
not really what I don't necessarily mean that when I'm thinking about being doing something experimental. I
Yeah.
would bet you a lot of creatives don't. But what it does mean is doing something against your norm, doing something that goes steps outside the box of whatever genre conventions exist.
Right.
And I like to try and do things like that to see if they'll work. Because when they do work, when you can make it work, your skills have been all the more bolstered because it's not easy to do these things. So if you don't want to, you can people could go their entire career and not test themselves. They don't
Mhm.
have to. No one says you have to.
Yeah.
What's the adage? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Right.
But for me, I want to see if I can do something. Can I do that? And it's as much do I have the skills to do it as it is do I have the creativity to do it.
Mhm.
So I just try. And I've been successful in, coming up with a couple of things that, like, I love head hopping because I've learned how to do it without it looking like some random mess. But
Yeah.
easy, and so it took some time. I like, one moment writing a poem and then going and writing a screenplay and coming back in the evening to add to a novel. Three different ways of thinking entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that I can do it, that I've proven to myself that I can do it, really makes me have a confidence that, I don't know, because I started so young, I kind of feel like I was always supposed to be doing this. So confidence in my work was never the question,
I
which
love
I know
that.
is not the case for a lot of people. But I'm saying, for me, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this,
Yeah.
but I have this confidence that I'm not just becoming stagnant. I'm doing things, changing, moving, and I can still do that,
Yeah.
which is, not something that you can walk in and just have this assumed, proficiency in.
Right.
So I'm kind of it's invigorating. I'm also a pantser, which is, if for people who may
Mhm.
not know, that is, I don't plot anything out. I do not outline. I do not write. Oh my gosh, no. They make like my hands are itching just saying the word outline. I can't. Oh, I don't. I just start going. And
That's
so in that
amazing.
starting to just go, it gives me the understanding that I can rely upon my mind to figure out what the devil I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like, worry that I don't know where I'm going with something, or I know when to jump ship. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And not every idea works, right? So
Sure.
I think that, yeah, always trying something new
Yeah.
and seeing it through to whether, I mean, because some things don't work. Not You get better and you can figure out what's not going to work earlier enough so that you don't have wasted so much time on it. But doing that is the crux of my entire career.
Yeah.
So everything, I'd say that, okay, I knew I could write this contemporary gothic. That's the one I knew I could write. That's the first one I ever wrote. I knew I was going to write that. You know,
Yeah.
since then I was like, let's see how this goes. And
That's
I'm happy.
amazing.
It's been, so the career has been less of writing with a goal for publication. Sure, that is the ultimate goal,
Of
but it's
course.
been more writing with a goal of, honing my skills. So.
Yeah. I love it. I feel like you have such a wonderful time writing every single day. And you can tell when you read something how much fun the author had creating the world or creating the storyline, what have you, right? And I think pushing yourself in that way is the mark of wonderful horror, right? Because we love I feel like horror fanatics everywhere love all of the details and all of the expression that you see through the eyes of authors. It's so much fun because that's what it is
Mhm.
ultimately, right? As scared as you may get, right? It is thrill seeking, it is fun, you
Right.
learn something,
Well,
right?
it's our job to scare you or to make you feel something.
Yeah.
For me, from a psychological horror perspective and a quiet horror perspective, the scare, I'm making air quotes, the scare is relative. My job is to make you feel dread.
Yeah.
And so if you finished reading, and this has been, I love, this is the biggest compliment that I'm ever paid. If you might finish my book at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, broad daylight, sunshine and everything,
Sure, sure.
you're fine. You think, oh, that was nice. You're done. 11 o'clock at night, when you go to cut your light off, you are now nervous about turning that light off because of my book. So in the broad daylight, you were fine.
Right.
But it's my goal to plant that. And so
I
that
love it.
and make sure it pops out at you at some point. If I can't do that, then that's not being successful. No, everyone's going to have varying degrees of it. But
Yeah.
it's my job is to make sure that I touch everybody some way.
That's so exciting, right? To have that visceral response. I don't know, like that's really showing like these characters flying from the page, right? And sticking in our brains for hours later, right? Until you turn that light off.
You're a true horror fan, because sometimes when I say that to people, they're like, "Whoa, that sounds so creepy." It does sound creepy, but it's the truth.
I mean, right? Like, I don't know. I always love talking to guests on this show because I love seeing how much they love the spooky. I love seeing how it built them, and how it's kind of illustrated their livelihoods, right? And everybody loves different genres, sure, or different concepts of horror, but all of us, all the same, we really chase that thrill. There's
Yep.
something so exciting, and like you said, about feeling something, right? Like as simple as that is, but also as metaphorical as that is,
Right.
to
Right.
feel something, to get you, as silly as it sounds, out of your own head. Maybe things are hard that day, right? Maybe rent's due, maybe you're stressed about something, right? And it is so exciting to be like, for once in my life, I'm scared about what could be in that shadow tonight,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. The only way to make that happen, I feel,
Yeah.
is to make the reader connect and relate so closely with the characters in the book that they feel like, they thought they were picking up a book for escapism, but they feel like they just kind of stepped into another room in their house. And in that room, there's some scary stuff.
Yeah.
But the only way to do that is through description, really, really good scene setting. You have to, if your environment, your scenery doesn't fit, if you don't craft, oh gosh, especially with gothic horror, the only reason
Uh,
we're afraid of castles is because someone told us to be. Like someone made us afraid
100%.
of what a dreary house looks like, and all that. No, otherwise it's just a house. There's nothing spooky about. What's the spooky about an abandoned house? Nothing. No one even lives there.
Exactly.
Someone told us
You should be
that
scared.
scary, and now it sticks. And the only way to do that is to try and you have to describe well. There's a fine line between over describing and just enough, and nobody can tell you where that line is. No one.
No.
You have to feel it, read it again, feel it. Have people read it and see if they feel it. But you have to do that descriptive work. If you don't, then it'll fall flat.
Yeah.
So, and then it'll just be scary for this someone trying to be scary,
Yeah.
which is what I I struggle with this because I feel like a lot of people who would not peg themselves as horror fans,
Sure.
they so everybody likes a little scare every now and then, but that doesn't make you a horror fan.
No.
So the people who are looking for, something spooky one day, they paint the whole genre and everyone who works within it with this broad brush, and it's gore, and it's like nasty, like a visceral,
Right.
you know, guts, and
Mhm.
yeah, there's a space for that. I mean, extreme horror is real in
Yeah.
our subgenre, in our genre, but that's the only thing that that's not all of horror. And I think that so many people don't realize that, and that's a struggle for us on the quieter side of the spectrum. We're just you don't even realize we're over there if you're not looking for it. So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
people tell me their first horror movie is like Halloween, which is my one of my favorites, I
Yeah.
think Halloween might be my very favorite like slasher movie.
It's pretty great.
You tell me that's your favorite or the only one you've seen, or you say like Friday the 13th. If you mean the first one, that's actually a really good movie. The first one's a little psychological, kind of,
Totally.
but if you go to if you tell me the others is your first one, then I'm like, oh, I got you, we can talk. But if you tell me it's like Hostel, well,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is fair.
I'm saying it's not, because Hostel is a good movie, it's just extreme horror, it's
Totally.
different. So
Totally.
yeah, it's, I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, no, that's fair. I'm with you. I'm on the quiet spectrum. And perhaps it's because I get freaked out with a lot of gore. I can't handle it very well. But
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for just a really great story and really brilliant characters built, layered characters that perhaps either you see yourself in or you're afraid to see yourself in, right? Like,
Right.
like this, we connect a little bit more than perhaps I would have liked to.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
fun. It's
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's so much fun as a reader.
Oh yeah. Well, because you don't have the supernatural element is wonderful, and I do love it. I utilize it all the time.
Yeah,
But before I get to the supernatural piece of it, you hopefully have found yourself wondering why you relate so closely to that character.
totally.
Because the people who are experiencing the supernatural are just people like us walking around any town,
Yeah,
So
anywhere.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, speaking about, right, like building the worlds or the characters or what have you, Elmarie, what do you think a monster is?
Ooh. A monster. What a hard question that is.
I know.
It could be anything, really, right? Oh, well, yeah, I'm stumped. Wow, that's
I
crazy.
love
I'm
it. That's
stumped
okay.
for the afternoon. I think maybe a monster is any being, human or otherwise, that has opposing values from mine and has set its sights on me,
Mm, yeah.
so that that could be a human monster who is bent on attacking me for physically or emotionally over something,
Yeah.
or it could be the supernatural component that we think of. It doesn't have to be this big grotesque thing. It could be, I mean, okay, American Psycho, that
Mm,
Patrick Bateman, it was a monster.
yeah.
you know
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's just a human person with some challenges that he was experiencing
No,
in that book,
totally. Yes.
and had turned that onto me, that would have been, disastrous. And so
Yeah.
I feel that you can absolutely use the term monster
Mm,
for human and supernatural elements.
totally. Great definition. Yes. And I also love that you mentioned, you're often the target, right, in this definition, which
Uh-huh.
could be so frightening
Oh yeah.
in so many
Oh yeah.
ways.
Oh yeah. Because you can be afraid of something that's happening in front of you, but it's not turned towards you, and you can have an opinion or not. Like, you can blow it off or not. But when it turns its sights onto you, that's when you see it. You know
Yeah.
what
Totally. Totally. You feel that fear.
I mean?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yes. Well, speaking of monsters, and before we get to our leading man today, I'm curious, what is a kaiju, El Marie?
A big monster. No, just really. I mean,
Yeah,
ultimately, a big monster, right? that
quite
wasn't a
literally.
right. That wasn't a term I was familiar with until like maybe like 10 years ago. I don't know
Yeah,
why I was. Probably because I'm on the other spectrum.
yeah.
So I don't even write. I've never even written about a monster. That literally, I mean, like a kaiju, ever.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
okay, that's something else I haven't written. But so my experience has always just been some huge monster.
Right.
Huge. We had a huge moth on our deck just the other day. I swear to you, it was like, I mean, you see my hands together. It was humongous,
Yeah,
humongous.
yeah.
We looked at it and we were like, "That's Mothra," and we but then
Right
also
there.
we left the deck too because we're like, "What?" Because it was like flying, like it wanted to come over and sit on us, and I'm like, "Ah, let's go!"
Right. It's okay.
But I'm getting out of here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
A big monster. Like, I don't even have a better
No,
definition.
quite
I,
literally. It is, and a lot of the time, not all of the time, but I think there is some sort of like animal hybrid to it too, right? Like as you said, right?
yeah, I
Um,
don't think it has anything with the human. Like the human, we were talking about human monsters a minute ago.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
really see that as kaiju. That's just a big monster to me. Big, like unnatural, not human
Yeah.
monster.
Yep. Yep. Very big.
Put up our own definitions now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, perhaps to be truthful, one of the most famous kaijus ever is Godzilla, El Marie. So please, who the heck is Godzilla?
I love Godzilla though.
Of
And I don't
course.
know, like I've done some research recently now, I'm like, wait a minute. But then I love the old, okay, so look, I am a child of the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So Godzilla, the original Godzilla movies were being played on television, and they were a family favorite. So for
Oh
whatever reason, we've seen like all of them.
yeah.
And that's the Godzilla I love. And this is like I don't even know, it looks like a dinosaur to me.
Right.
I don't know. I think so. And gets up for some reason. Don't know why he's walking around. Oh, I know so little. But he gets up for some reason.
You're doing
And he
great.
starts stomping around, and like every step is like crushing buildings and ruining bridges and roads. And
Yes.
at one point, he was like the beast to run from, and then he was helping people. I don't really understand how the shift came, but I just loved him always, and because I don't, just like with King Kong. If you've ever seen the original King Kong,
Oh yeah.
listen, they don't need to shoot him. I just really have an issue with him being shot. I'm so
Absolutely.
angry
That's the most tragic part, right? Of the film.
because it's not just me. Because people look at me like I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Nope.
It's it's a movie, and I don't like it. They don't need to shoot him. He was not bothering anyone.
No.
Leave him over there wherever they got him from. I can't remember where they got him. Leave him where he was.
What is it, Skull Island or something? I don't remember.
They got him and they took him and they had him in the city and all that. Just leave him alone.
Yeah.
I really didn't like that. So when they shoot at Godzilla, it bothers me. Even though he might have been evil in that one. Like, there's some movies he's really not the good guy. In some movies he is.
No, sure.
But I don't like them shooting at him anyway. So yeah, there's that.
Yes.
And there's my Godzilla story. I was a kid when I saw Godzilla, and I absolutely loved. I will tell you this though, I do not, and this is not a dig on any of the new movies, because the movies
That's okay.
are actually fantastic. Godzilla -1. Oh, that was
it's a good one.
That movie was so good. That movie was good.
It was great.
And I don't want to give anything away, with the brilliant way that they trapped him. Oh, that was so good. It was wonderful.
It's a great film.
It's so good. But I do not like... Well, he looks different. And so he looks a little meaner than he used to look, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
I don't find him to be mean. So, which could be a me thing. But I don't like how mean he looks now.
Yeah.
The last one with him and King Kong, again, I told you about my King Kong. I did not like that King Kong went to go get him, and he was like, "Oh, it's on again, you and I." And I'm like, "No!" I'm like, "Please stop it." So I've been distraught about Godzilla, like, not behaving the way he should be behaving, as far as I'm concerned, for like years. Apparently, I
love it. I love it. I love your soft spot for them both. Actually,
and I know you didn't ask any of that, but I'm just telling you.
No.
I just know what my issue is, but it's from like a kid, really.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I did. It was funny in the movie theater. As soon as they got they were almost about to square off, I was so finished. I was like, stop it, no.
Yeah. There's no need, right?
There's no need.
Yeah. I love it, and I'm excited to dive deeper into your love, for sure. I'm so fascinated. That's so cool. Well, okay, you mentioned this a little bit right now too. So can you please describe, the first Godzilla films, right? Like black and white. What did Godzilla look like in those films?
He looked like a dinosaur to me, but he was like knobby dinosaur. He has the plates on the back like a Stegosaurus.
Yeah.
And he stands like a T-Rex.
Totally.
His arms are longer though.
They are a little bigger.
And yeah, so a weird mix, but he also was very like knobby. That's a child's description, because honestly, I'm just remembering what he looked like, and my kid brain is coming up with knobby, almost like tree bark, almost in the way that, like, the texture. So not quite what you think of as a dinosaur. Mind you, none of us have actually seen a dinosaur, but not quite, but lizard-like in that way.
Yeah.
Reptile, but not necessarily the skin. I don't know. The skin did not look like what I thought.
Yeah.
So yes, knobby is my description, and I write. That's right, knobby is what I'm saying.
See, I would have said pickle-like. So yours is way better.
I don't know that. I think pickle-like is actually good, because I can visualize that. Knobby makes no sense. I had to say tree bark to get past knobby, so I don't know.
So for anybody listening, kind of a conglomerate of those things.
If you can imagine.
Yeah.
But he does look like a dinosaur. I think I always thought he was a dinosaur.
Totally.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
His teeth and tail, like, it's long, like, yeah, he's got so very dinosaur-like. Yeah.
And he has a specific power, right? Elmer?
Yeah, which I'm not appreciating the way it's done now. I mean, I just think there was no charging of your back to get your to be able to shoot the laser breath. Like, come on, he would just like shoot fire like a dragon,
Literally.
And like now he gets charged up, and you can see all the plates in his back like charging. That's new. That's a new thing. That's for television now or for movies now. But back in the day, he would just get annoyed and blow some fire at you. That was it.
And within seconds, it was just like boom.
Yeah, and his roar was also awesome. I love it. They have kept that, thank goodness.
It is so nostalgic. Like that roar. I was listening to it earlier today to prepare for our interview, and
like you can't do it. Like I've tried before, and you can't get it to come out of your own mouth at all.
It's like 3 different octaves, like all at the same time. It's such a great roar. Like it's so fantastic. It's so hefty. But you're
It
right.
is.
They continue it with these new films, which is really
Thank goodness.
lovely.
Because, it's interesting if I can digress just a little bit. If you
Please.
think about Star Wars,
Yeah.
and you remember the 4, 5, and 6 came out first in the 70s and
Yep.
80s, and then 1, 2, 3 in the 90s.
Hmm.
And then we've done away with numbers apparently. Now we're on whatever we're on.
Just what's
And
next?
so whatever's next. That music, you see the diagonal sort of like rolling text, but after the first sentence, the music's coming on.
Oh yeah,
And that music.
totally.
One of those movies came out without that music, and I can't remember what it was. It was not 4, 5, or 6, nor was it 1, 2, or 3. I think it was one of these ones that doesn't have a number. I don't think it was. Oh, that's terrible. I've seen them
Oh,
all, but I
that's
can't remember
okay.
which one did. But listen. Anyone watching knows which one it was. It threw me off for like 20 minutes into the film because I was like, how could they not have the music? What happened to the music? I was so upset.
Yeah.
So it was a joy to see that Godzilla sounded the way he should, even though he didn't quite look the way he should, because he really looks more like a Stegosaurus now to me. He's leaned over a little more too, but
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. There's quick fans, right?
yeah.
In a lot of these horror narratives. Like they're going to be followers, people that like really attach themselves to
Oh yeah,
iconic moments of these films. I think you're right. Like just like Star Wars, right? Like Godzilla not having his roar, I think would have been a problem.
oh
Like
yeah,
it needs to sound almost, I don't know, but it's otherworldly, right? It's
yeah.
something you've never heard before. But when you hear it, you know darn well, like that's Godzilla, point blank, period.
Right.
Oh,
Right. I hope that, like, if we were to ever, like, imagine a world where you could actually hear Godzilla because Godzilla was really coming, would I turn around and be like, listen, or keep running like the person I'm supposed? You're supposed to run, not stop and look at the monster behind you. Like, don't lose your mind
oh,
and be like, oh, it's God. Have you ever seen Godzilla?
oh my
And
god.
go- But the fear I have is that I would be like, listen to it.
No, I'm right there with you,
Right?
unfortunately,
Okay.
and would probably get beamed to death because
Right?
I,
I'm crushed because I'm still standing there.
God,
Just like, look, it's right there.
like
No, no.
me with my notebook, like please sign, you know what I mean? And then explode. Like, oh jeez, Louise.
Oh gosh.
He's
But see,
that
that's why this
cool.
stuff is made up. That's why this stuff is made up. We better not ever meet Godzilla. We're in trouble if that ever happened.
No, 100%. Like, there's a problem. Definitely. Definitely. Yes. Okay. So obviously there's, right, this power that he has, right, to kind of fire and explosions and all of this stuff. And I'm really curious, like, what are the origins of Godzilla? Whether that's in the story, right? Like, how did he come to be, or whether that's the films themselves, the writings? Like, what do you know, El Marie, about the creation of this monster?
I will tell you, I didn't know much beyond my childlike interest
Yeah.
until just recently. I
Yeah.
don't know if I like what I've learned at all,
It's
actually.
interesting.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those moments where, so, you know, from what I understand, the American audience has really gotten a watered down version of these movies and what Godzilla is and what it stands for.
Right.
And I was clueless, and I like Godzilla movies, so I can only imagine that so many people had no idea the
Totally.
impact and the connection that the Japanese people have to these movies,
Yeah.
because Godzilla is representative of what happened to them. And I see it now that I see it after because at first I'm like, what? And then I had to really do some more research, and yeah, boy, oh boy, I actually see.
Yeah.
And I will say this, outside of the emotional piece, which I'm not discounting at all,
Sure, sure.
creativity of being able to express this monster, this nightmare in physical form, because that knobbiness is related to the possibly the radiation and
Mhm.
the bombing. And I'm speaking of Hiroshima and Nagasaki,
Right.
the bombing and all of this beast. I think he was still a dinosaur. I think that part's right. If I'm remembering
I
what I've
believe
read.
you're right.
And but was awakened by this what happened, the turmoil and everything, the bombings that happened, and this is the result on him, and so he's the embodiment of the tragedy. And so yeah, he's blowing fire at everybody. Yes, he's doing all these different things, but it's also showing the destruction that the bombing, it's like taking the bombing and putting it in physical form.
Correct.
And so not only is it embodying what happened, it's also showing the impact of doing it over and over every time he crushes something, every time he blows something up. And it was like eye opening, and I felt like, good God, of course that's what, if you just look, yeah, makes
Yeah.
logical sense. That's not the way it was shown here. Never once. Not until I looked for it specifically
Yeah.
did I find that out. So yeah, I mean, it's like, it's a very, boy, I don't know, because when I found it, it gave me chills, made me feel sick for having loved it. And then I was like, but the creativity, it's beautiful how it was able to be made in that way, because now it's a living embodiment that has sort of permeated history everywhere
Yeah.
without us realizing, we're being taught a lesson here. Pay attention and look at what the lessons are. And so I'm two ways. I'm like, oh, what a horrible thing. But I'm like, oh my gosh, what an amazing way to make sure nobody ever forgets. And I think that is so very important. So I don't know if I said what the origin was. I'm trying to be
Yeah.
clear that it's the embodiment of what happened with at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and what the end result is in the continuing impact of behaving this way, which we were not shown here in America, at least from my memory watching on
Yeah.
television. I don't remember anything like that. Nothing like that at all.
Yeah.
It was just a big monster.
Right.
But that's the beauty of horror when you think about it. Horror is almost always, I mean, I write just for fun, but sometimes these messages, these social commentary, these consumerism, for example, has been covered in zombie movies. Like Dawn of the
Sure.
Dead is all about. It's in them all, for goodness sakes, and shows you
Totally.
people walking around. Excellent imagery. Just the cinematography on that is perfect. Very similarly to, if you look at Godzilla's skin, look at what he's doing, and look at the shooting at him. Look at the all of those things that are occurring.
Yeah.
Why is he behaving that way? Why are they shooting at him? Why? Everything you see happening with Godzilla, you can ask why, and the answer comes back to something that happened with human nature, and you can realize the mistakes and errors that if you don't make changes, this is what's going to happen. Horror is always in that space.
Yeah.
Think about Night of the Living Dead.
Oof, oof, oof.
It was great all the way through, right? I mean, the movie is fantastic. And as a black woman, I will tell you, I'm not, I saw this, it had been out years before I was born. But when I saw it, I looked at my mom and I said to her, is that actor alive? Now, that's a terrible thing to have to say, but I meant it.
Yeah.
Because for those of you who don't know, he's the black man. There's only one black person in this whole movie. The black man is the one who's like got his head still screwed on straight. He's scared, but he's like, he can still plan and figure out what to do and fortify the house and try to save themselves. And he's in there with a couple of other men and some women, and one of the women like is distraught. Now I'm not saying this should happen. I don't think anyone should ever be physical with anybody. But look, this is the movies back in the 60s. I think we all, right? And he hauls off and he slaps her because she was like going for it. And he slaps her and she stops, like she calms down a second. I've never been slapped in my face like this. I cannot imagine that stops you from wigging out. I think it might make you wig out worse. But anyway, but he slapped her. But he slapped her in the 60s. A black man slapped a white woman on in the movies. I looked at my mom. I said, is he alive? Is he alive? And I looked, he was. Because I thought in real life, people weren't going to stand for that. Yeah. But the commentary that's come from that point is amazing. Because spoiler alert, at the end, he still lives and gets shot. As though he were a zombie. They shoot him anyway. So the black man still dies in the movie, right?
At the end.
But, right, yeah, definitely. Oh, God, he made it all the way through.
All the way through.
God. But it's the social commentary piece of it, though. The aspect of, oh, this guy's black, he can't tell me what to do. Oh, you laid hands on this woman or whatever. Oh, you watch, he's still not going to get out in the end. All of that stuff comes together to give you a message and a story about history, and it'll repeat itself if you don't change. So I hate that I learned that stuff about Godzilla. Like, well, no, let me rephrase that. I hate that the whole thing happened. Number one.
Of course.
Number two, I hate that anybody felt like they needed to make a monster to reflect real life and show this kind of social commentary.
Yeah.
But I'm so appreciative of it now that I know,
Yeah.
because I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Now that I know, I can only respect the creativity, the guts to do something like that, because that took guts. And I hope that people do realize. I hope anybody listening to us hears me saying these things and says, "What's she talking about?" and looks it up, because it'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
It'll rock your world, because it's not just a monster movie, you
Right.
know? So now, and I told you, I always loved him, always loved Godzilla. In the end, when I went through my ball of emotions, I'm at the end thinking, oh, I still really love him, because now I'm like, oh, you poor thing.
Yeah.
Like, how in the world? This is the worst thing ever. And you're the embodiment of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of crushed me, but it was eye-opening.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I feel like for many of us, right, horror and just being scared or what have you is the easiest way to communicate things that are really hard to talk about, right? Like of course, like in everyday life there is something so beautifully metaphorical, and it's just an easier pill to swallow when you can take those things out of your brain or out of society or whatever and just morph them into something else and be like, that's the bad guy, right? Or whatever. And
Right.
it's so conflicting. It's so conflicting because you feel so deeply for the story and for just the situation, the culture.
Mhm.
Like there's just so much,
Yeah.
so much empathy you have.
Yeah.
And yet I feel like these monsters that stand in those places become our favorites because
Yeah.
like you said, they were brave enough in a way, right, to represent that, to be that, to tell the stories that people don't want to hear, that to tell the stories that need to be told.
Right.
And Godzilla is a perfect example of it. And it is a tragedy. Every
Mhm.
single movie, every single time, right? Whether he goes back into the ocean or whatever, it's a tragedy every
Yep.
time.
Mhm.
And it makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
Why little Elle Marie was like, I feel so much for this character for some reason, right?
Right.
I think it goes to the creation of the story. There is a reason. I think that was always the goal.
Mhm.
You should
And
feel
good.
confused.
Thank goodness, because and I wish, but see, thank goodness, but I wish more people knew,
Yeah,
because I feel like this should be a really huge news story. Like, someone else should be talking about the fact that this is actually representative of what happened
yeah,
in 1945.
yeah,
I did not, and I'm talking about, I've watched Godzilla for like almost my whole life.
yeah,
I don't know how I never heard this before until like just recently.
yeah.
Should be bigger than that. But isn't that the same about everything? When you think about people who've been oppressed in this world, you think about all the things that have gone on. You
Mm-hmm.
think about women, just women as I mean, I'm black, I am a woman. You know, double whammy, not to call it a whammy for me, it's fantastic, but
Yeah,
double whammy in society,
yeah. Oh,
right?
totally. Yes.
And so when you think about these things, yeah, people should be talking about this in general across the board. Candyman is a reflective of
Ugh,
this.
yeah.
I mean, that when you realize what actually happened, it's like, wait a minute, like, oh, this is all
Mm-hmm.
fun and everything until you realize what happened,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Totally.
And all sorts of, I mean, horror is a wonderful place to be able to showcase the ills of the world
Yeah.
in a way that, it's heavy when you get it, but it'll sort of indoctrinate you if you don't, if you just keep, it'll be in the back of your head. And then when the moment it snaps to being, to your forefront, you will be exposed and amazed and surprised.
Oh,
And now, guilty is one thing. You know, I don't know. Some people definitely should feel a certain way about certain things, right?
yeah.
Having watched it myself, I felt for a moment like, oh my God, I never even noticed. I felt horrible.
Mm.
And then I said, wait a minute, but I do know now, don't I?
Yeah.
Like, I need to pay attention now.
Yeah.
And I would love to see, because what you want is your work to be transformative for people.
Yeah.
And I think that anybody who's listening to us today, and wondering exactly what the devil we're talking about.
Yeah.
Pay attention, because I bet you there's a lot, you
Of
know?
course, yes.
Some sections of society are not going to pay attention to this. Because it's just not how it was shown here. It's
Right.
just not. All
Right.
you gotta do is screw your thinking cap on, though. You'll see it.
Oh yeah.
So I would like to see people pay attention to that. I would like to see people pay attention to final girls. Come on, pay attention. Really pay attention to what you're looking at.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
understand what's being said to you.
Totally. Totally.
So I'm we're bringing up movies more so. Books are, I think they're less readers of any kind, of any genre,
Hmm.
of any, not just horror, any genre, than moviegoers.
Hmm.
And so therefore that I'm speaking in movies, and I have a background in movies, so I kind of talk about movies a lot. But
Of course.
I love it. I love movies, but you gotta pay attention to, like, if you think about the birth of a nation, the first,
Oh.
yeah, okay, look at it again. Like, now that we've gone all these years, now you look at it again. Do you think honestly you should have? Because the problem is what we see colors our perception,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we go with.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're running around thinking that black people are savages, and that all they want to do is grab hold of women and rape them. If you watch that movie, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine there were no other movies out. That was cinema. That's
Yeah.
all they had.
Yes.
So anybody who didn't know better because of any interpersonal relationships, they're looking at this and going, "Oh yeah, that's how they are." And it's we have got to screw our thinking caps on as a society. We have to pay attention to the world around us and look beyond our noses, look beyond our neighborhoods, look beyond our state, look beyond our countries.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the world. So
Yeah.
that's, and it was interesting because I thought I did, but you learn something new every day.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so amazing about it, right? I
Yeah,
don't think it's humanly possible for us to know everything. I mean, it's just
exactly.
not. It's just not. But I think the beautiful thing about, your gateway to a scary film is you have an openness and a willingness to learn something new.
Right,
You are just by pressing play, right? You're giving yourself over to be like, I want to see these different perspectives. I want to learn about these things that maybe I just can't relate to, but I need to know about our histories, right?
right.
And I'm just like you. I've learned some of the most intense, wild things I had never heard about in my life, but would have not, right? If I didn't turn on the TV and watch a scary film, right?
Right.
Like that's how they get you. That's how they connect with you, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
so my favorite person in the world is Guillermo del Toro. I love him so much, and
Mhm.
Pan's Labyrinth was introduced to me by my dad at a young age, and that's my favorite film. I can watch it every day. I love that film, and
Oh wow.
it wasn't until I was in college, right, writing a paper about it, that I was like, oh, I guess I should research the wars behind this film, and I was floored. I was flabbergasted, right? Like the way that you're able to explore the worlds of racism and war and famine and right misogyny and paint the picture right in this fairy tale like journey.
Right.
And ever since then I was like, that is the only horror I love. I want to learn about people. I want to learn about real life circumstances through the guise of horror. I want to, because it opens my eyes to learn more about it and to explore it and to see different perspectives. It pushes you. It
Yeah.
pushes you in a way. And don't get me wrong, right? There are some gory moments that I can't handle still to this day in that film, but it's there to show you, right?
Right.
Just a glimpse of how horrible it used to be in this situation. And I don't know, it's wild to me. That's why I will die on this hill. I think horror films, movies, just the best, right? Like just the best.
Yep.
You learn so much about yourself and about society, and it's hard. It's really hard, and there are many a film that we cry at, horror specifically, but I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, I think to myself the most recent depiction I would say that's sort of widespread
Yeah.
about black life in America is Get Out.
Uh,
Now we were laughing, right? People laughed, but if you looked at your audience, Okay, and it's amazing to me because I had the luxury of going, and it was a very mixed audience.
Yeah, yeah.
The stuff I laughed at is not the same stuff that the white folks next to me laughed at, and then what they laughed at, I was not laughing
Mm-hmm.
at.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're coming from two different worlds,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an understanding of, you know, because later, and I've witnessed this happen, where people have said to me, "Was that stuff true though?" Like later, much later, and I'm like, "Yep, now go watch it again."
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely what these are thought patterns. These are things we've said. These are all sorts of things from beginning to end, and it's a difficult reality, isn't it? But couched in a way that gave us humor and gave us an interesting story,
Mm-hmm.
gave us action, but for black people, that was a very realistic thing. And mind you, nobody's expecting to get, body snatched, but golly, that's a whole nother thing to be frightened of if
Oh,
that's
oh, oh, absolutely. Oh,
but at the same time, so many of the body snatching is a metaphor. I mean, that's not
yeah.
exactly, but it's definitely, the conversations about appropriation, and then you can just liken it right back to this movie.
Mm.
Conversations about all these different things, and just loving who you love. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's challenges just with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is horror movies are brilliant in
Yeah.
that they allow us the ability to feel like, okay, I can go in for something that's not but so heavy and come out finding how heavy it actually is. I don't think that if I had known that his skin
Hmm.
was reflective of the when I say his, I'm back to Godzilla.
Right.
His skin was reflective of, just sort of giving an idea of what the and it's not that the flesh looked like this after these bombings, but it was, the radiation and the impacts of just a sort of a creative embodiment or envisioning of what skin could look like under these conditions. And I think I would have just been in tears and never been able to get the message.
Hmm.
I never would have understood the whole message if
Right.
I had been focused on that sadness. And that's the beauty of the writing of the films and the creation of the beast and all of again, back to the Get Out stuff. Wonderful use of humor, all these things that allowed us to ease our way into the real message, which is terrifying. And I mean, I just think that, and there's so many other examples. I mean, I cannot pronounce the name of the ghost. Oh, if you've seen The Ring, if you've seen
Oh, Samara, I think.
no, there's a ghost that is the actual ghost that they're Onryo. I think I'm right about that, but I don't know that I am.
Gosh,
But
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
female ghost with the hair in front of her
Yeah.
face.
Oh, okay.
Because we've got several different iterations now. We've got
Yeah.
the one from The Ring, and we have the one from the Grudge movies, or the originals are so much better. You guys, a
Oh,
Ju-on movie.
frightening in a wonderful way.
Oh, God. But she's there for a reason. And everyone just wants to be afraid of her because she does look creepy, and the way she moves is really terrifying, no doubt.
Totally.
But do you understand that is the ghost of not just any old ghost.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ghost of a woman who has been killed, usually by someone she loved. This is her spirit, specifically. It's not just any ghost. It was like someone outside just hit by a car, and it's a different ghost. This woman was wronged. So when you think about the fact that, wait a minute, why are there so many movies about women being wronged? There's at least 3 franchises I can come up with. What do you mean you have a whole ghost that embodies this woman? What's happening to women in the world?
Yeah.
There could be 3 distinct ghosts that I can think of right now, and I'm sitting here in America watching movies if I can get them. Imagine if I were elsewhere where these movies are being made.
Right.
3 distinct women who have been wronged that are embodied by this ghost. So what's happening to women in the world? See how horror will do that to you? We're terrified of that girl. We're terrified of her. Do you think about why she's there in the first place? Why is she being depicted like that?
Right.
Why don't we see her face? Okay? That's something to think about. So, I mean, I'm just saying the messages that we give in horror are fantastic. You just have to give yourself the chance to actually see past the scary, because the scary is important, but that's not the message.
No. It's a feeling. And it's a very real feeling, more than likely, for whatever inspired the story. That
Yeah.
fear, that terror, right? Maybe just in a different way, but
Different,
it's similar, you know?
right?
Man.
It's scary when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So frightening. So frightening. Well, Elmarie, if this hour wasn't enough proof that you absolutely adore Godzilla, right? Like, why do you think Godzilla has stuck with you all these years?
It's got to be, it has to be because I felt something for him.
Yeah.
Every time they attack him, I feel so horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and then when he gets into a fight with King Kong, same idea in my head too, because at King Kong, for me and for a lot of black people, there was a racial slur for black people years ago. I understand King Kong's connection. There was a racial slur
Mm-hmm.
that likened us to gorillas and monkeys, and just horribly horrible
Absolutely.
things to say about people. And so seeing him, I was like, "Dude, oh, yeah, I just care for him. I don't want anything to happen to him." So when King Kong would fight with him, I'm seeing two. I didn't notice until recently. I was seeing two oppressed,
Yeah.
be fighting
Populations.
each other.
Yeah.
Never saw that. Didn't realize it. I just thought two things I like so much are fighting each other. But now I understand. I understand why it meant something to me. Now, why I connected to Godzilla years ago, I don't know, but it was immediate. It was
Yeah.
immediate. Sometimes you have to go with your gut. You have to go with your gut because something inside you knows more than you do.
Yeah.
You know, I saw a Godzilla and I was immediately like, leave him alone.
100%. Yes.
What an interesting thought to have as a young person, a very young person.
Mm.
Like, oh, don't hurt Godzilla. Not realizing that this is the embodiment of hurt. Just didn't realize it. So I'm going to go with, I must have had, and I think we all have this innate ability to feel this thing. So you've gone to a corner and said, just wait, stop at the stop sign longer.
Hmm.
You don't actually know what ended up happening. But what could have happened is an accident.
Yeah.
What could have happened is, somebody needs you back home and you would be too far if you'd kept going.
Right.
You don't, you have a sixth sense, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what reached out, connected me with Godzilla, because I don't know why I've always been like on his side. Don't have any idea. And I told you earlier on, good or bad, I didn't actually care what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing I don't like now is his face is just looking so mean, and the whole ramp up of his back, like that's just cinematography at all. But absolutely, like I didn't care if he was crushing things. I did not care at all. I was like,
Yeah.
just let him be. He's fine.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it just has to be this sort of feeling that you have, and I think as a horror author, as any author, you have to have that. You've got to tap into it. Because that's your creativity calling to you.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a moral compass that's calling to you as well.
Hmm.
And I'm starting to realize, in my older age now, which is not but so advanced, let me just say, but, I think that I am recognizing that I have that moral, I don't know. It's just there in some way. And I'm open to things now. I'm more open than I used to be. And I thought I was open. You know what I mean? That's the thing that's crazy. You think you're like, yeah, let me learn. You don't realize that the messages are right there the whole time. You've been exposed to these things and you didn't realize it. So like now I know what I think about King Kong.
Yeah.
I want to know what his actual origin story is now. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like you dive in because you see something interesting. You want to know more about, whatever's happening with this the Japanese is it Onryo? It's got to be. I feel like it's sticking. It's like a neon in my head.
Yeah. Yep.
The one hair in front of her face. You all know the ring. You all know you've seen her. It's not just that one ghost. There is a reason for her. When I found out, I was like distraught because I mean, as a woman, that's like, come on, And so, but guys, dive in, look, research. Be open.
You and I, Elmarie, could totally have a whole other podcast on just bathroom ghosts and Japanese horror, right? Like,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yeah.
So many deep, layered, powerful, heartbreaking stories.
Oh, yeah.
And it can all branch from just one one comic book, one film, one book, right?
One creative who's bold enough to
Yeah,
put their message out there.
yeah,
That's huge.
yeah, yeah.
Huge.
So brave.
Yeah.
So brave. Yeah. Well, why do you think that monsters are so darn important? Why should we keep talking about them, exploring them, writing about them? What is it about them?
I think with anything, if you don't talk about it or you know, speak, read, look, work with it, it'll die. So you've got to keep it alive. And the only way to do that is to continue to discuss. So if you don't write about Godzilla ever again, and there's never any movie about Godzilla ever again, you now know, if you're listening to this, that you're not just letting Godzilla go, you're letting the atrocities go and those people.
Hmm.
This is why, if you think about what a cemetery is for, right? I mean, you bury your family,
Yeah.
and you have this stone in a grave, and you go and you visit and you put flowers.
Mhm.
In my family, we used to do that a lot. We used to do it several times a year. Um, but when the generation that does that passes away, and then the other generations left and they didn't do it, they don't want to do it, don't have time to do it, you forget the person's name, you forget where they're buried, you can't remember the dates of their birth and death, and if you can't remember those vital statistics, you definitely don't remember anything about their personality.
Mm-mm.
So they're gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
If you keep talking about them, they're not gone. My children never met their great grandmother, my grandmother,
Yeah.
but they know her. They look, her pictures on the wall. I speak of her often. They know her. She's passed away, but she's not forgotten. They can tell you her whole name, tell you something about her.
Yeah.
And that's all I want.
Yeah.
I want them to remember her. So if you let go of these monsters, if I hadn't seen this massive moth and said, look at Mothra, you know,
Yeah.
if you let go of these things, they're gone. They're gone. Imagine Bruce Lee being gone. Come on, you want to? I mean, because if monsters, and you say, what's the point? What's the significance? Fine, I'll give you that. Imagine Bruce Lee being gone. Imagine Spock, Leonard Nimoy, gone. Like he didn't exist. We don't watch Star Trek anymore. Never talk about Spock. No one walks around and says live long and prosper. No one. Gone. Imagine.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about, television right now. I'm not speaking about, the people and these individuals I just mentioned in their real lives
Right.
and their real contribution to the world.
Right.
So you can say, yeah, but what does Godzilla have to do with the world? What does Mothra have to do with, what does Ultraman have to do with the world? What does any of that? You say nothing, but we just talked a whole, 45 minutes about Godzilla, and we now know Godzilla has a lot to do with the world.
Mhm.
Maybe you just don't know what Godzilla has to do with the world, or Mothra, or whomever.
Right. Right.
So if you let these monsters go, if you let the werewolf go, vampires, that was a reaction to people having a reaction to disease. You
Right.
let all that go. Imagine all those people who died okay. And what was the one? It was the Spanish flu,
Hmm.
early 1900s. Everyone was walking around with masks.
Hmm.
Look what we just did.
Yeah. Mere couple years.
Yeah. And so if you let go of history, then you're damned to repeat it, first of all. But you don't have you don't have the knowledge that you could glean from keeping that stuff, in the forefront. You are letting real people and their sacrifices and their contributions die.
Mhm.
These monsters are built on their constructs that we're building to push forward different information and get it to people in a way that they would understand. If you stop talking about the wolf man, don't think about the vampire, none of that. The story of Dorian Gray, the picture of Dorian Gray, you let that go. All these things are gone, all the penny dreadfuls, and you forget about a portion of history. Frankenstein, imagine the way we treat people. Frankenstein's a wonderful embodiment of that.
Oh, of course.
If you let that story go in 200 years and you see people behaving poorly the same way they did when we were dealing with it, you know what I mean? It's like nonsense. So if you let these monsters go, you're losing a piece of your history and saying it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And you're stunting your own growth. So that's why we should continue to write about Dracula, Frankenstein, Godzilla.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. You lose a piece of yourself,
Yep.
right? And in the adverse, you gain a piece of yourself you didn't know you
Yeah.
had,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and that's
I well,
amazing.
today's discussion, honestly, if anyone gets anything from this, is that I'm telling you, I watched Godzilla for years and didn't know, and now I know, and I'm so stunned by what I've learned.
Yeah.
We always have room for learning and growth, and coming away fresh from something.
Mhm.
So I really hope that people do continue to look at these monsters, and human and beast, whatever. Look at them, understand them.
Mm.
Why do they exist? What story am I actually being told?
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be a story about running zombies. I'm just not sure exactly what's being said to us, but something's being said to us.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Are you
Oh,
kidding?
exactly. But
Absolutely.
think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know we could talk about this forever, clearly, all day if given the chance, but we are unfortunately at our last question, El Marie, and it's a silly one, but I think I'm always so fascinated by what our guests say. But say you're just chilling, you're just relaxing, it's a lovely
Okay.
afternoon, and all of a sudden you look out your window and Godzilla's there at your window looking for you, right? What do you think you would do? What do you think you would say in that situation?
See, as long as Godzilla can understand and recognize I'm an ally, okay? Because if he doesn't, I'm gonna die for this. But if I see him and he roars, I'm gonna, like I said earlier, I'm gonna be like, listen to that, and I'm gonna hug his leg, whatever I can reach.
Oh,
But if he stomps on me because he's like, ah, I am a monster, and stomps, then this beautiful day is over. But if you assume that he recognizes me for who I am, I'm gonna hug his leg. I've
yeah,
always loved him.
yeah,
I've always loved him, like
yeah.
always.
And he'll have to recognize that. I
I
think.
hope so.
I think he
I hope so.
would.
Because animals will recognize you. They'll recognize love.
Yeah.
Oh, they recognize fear too, so be careful. But they will definitely recognize love.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that you could be like, oh, because I would just be like grinning from ear to ear and like just totally open to this slaughter that would be coming my way if he doesn't recognize it.
Okay, that's okay. I think that is a brilliant bow to tie this episode with, right? This metaphorical idea of like horror really could wreck you, okay? It could totally mess you up. But man, there are those brief moments where you connect on a spiritual level and it
That's right.
changes you.
That's right. Like if like imagine if I were to meet Lestat, the vampire Lestat. I should be afraid, but I'd be like, dude, listen, I like always been a fan of yours.
Big
You
fan.
fantastic, right? And I mean, you're just waiting, like offering up your vein for the biting. But I definitely would be like, look, can we sit and talk for just a couple of minutes? I honestly would. And so I just think my reaction is probably wrong towards all these things.
No such thing.
But you realize if
Nothing.
Martha shows up, I'm out of here. I've been clear about that. I'm out of here.
That's and
I'm
that's
out of here.
okay. She tried earlier. She tried earlier at your doorstep. It just didn't work.
Very small. We show up at your full form. I'm out of here. No, I'm fully out of here. I'm leaving my own house.
Moving
I'm
out.
getting in my car and driving out of here.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, El Marie, for being on the show today. We're so thankful. It was such a blast. Not only getting to learn about you, but your ideologies and how you're pushing the world of horror forward. I mean, it's amazing. It really is.
Thank you so much. That was a great conversation.
So glad. So glad. This episode of Floaties for Krakens was written and recorded by me, Camille Maria Acosta. A monstrous thank you to El Marie Wood for such an enjoyable interview. A big thank you to Michael Kosman for producing a stellar episode, and a huge thank you to Natalie Hedberg for designing such a phenomenal logo. And music for the show is also written and produced by me, with a special appearance by my tata, Toby Acosta. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's show. It truly means everything. If you have questions or curiosities about the research or media referenced in today's episode, everything will hopefully be in the description box. And you can find us on our website and our socials, links in the description as well. Anyway, thanks again for being here, everyone. And just a reminder, it's okay to be afraid of the monster, but it's also okay to love the heck out of it too. Keep being monstrous and keep shining bright.